From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
And broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. Chase Parham, Neal McCready, Clark Ford Studio this morning. We'll talk a little Ole Miss football. Had an Ole Miss basketball visitor over the weekend as well. We'll touch on that. And we spent a little time talking to Brian Rippee of Sports Talk Mississippi. A lot of Ole Miss football leading into Alabama, and maybe even more critical from a season standpoint, Vanderbilt the following week. We also hit on the Sanderson Farms over the weekend and a little more with him coming up in a bit on the podcast. It's brought to you every single day by the Oxford Exxon, Highway 6 West in Oxford. Ribs, lunch specials with the home game in a couple weeks. Let them cater your tailgate. You get great prices on slabs of ribs, pulled pork, great sides, and much more. And you know you save money at the pump with the Speed Pass Plus app, the mobile rewards program, and more. And you get that 49-cent fill-up for your stadium cup, any fountain drink, 49 cents at Blue Sky locations throughout Mississippi. And again, coming to you from the Clark Ford Studio.
We are Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi. 662-257-1900 is the number. Call it. Ask for Corey. And tell Corey what Ford you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours. It's that simple. It's right to the bottom line. No hassle, no haggle. You get your quote. The rest is up to you. You can shop it around, or you can do what I've done, what so many other listeners to our podcast, network of podcasts have done, and that's hop into a Clark Ford today. You'll love the product. You'll absolutely love the service after the sale. It's fantastic. They take care of you. Corey wants to be your truck guy. He wants to be your car guy. He'll prove it to you. 662-257-1900.
You know, we spent a little bit of time yesterday on mental health. Somebody tweeted at us yesterday, said if you're in the area and through the university, get a lot of low-cost options to talk to somebody through that. Just DM them that username on Twitter, JH Weinstein, WEINSTEIN. So just passing that along as we start today's show. That was reached out to us yesterday, and now we're passing it along to you. So if you feel like you need to take advantage of that. Okay. Let's start basketball. Got a story up at rebelgrove.com. A Russian recruit in town over the weekend. Got a few more visits coming up. You finally got to talk to a Russian. No, you can mark one off your bucket list.
I did, and I did. Samson.
Did we get a pronunciation?
We did, and I still can't do it.
Is it like an accent thing where you have a hard time?
Yes, I'm not Russian.
Okay.
Really nice kid.
The only thing in is Russian is vodka. Go ahead.
Really nice kid. Really enjoyed talking to him. The fun part for me was I said, all right, I got to do this because I always said if I ever talk to a Russian, I'm going to ask this question. I said, have you watched Rocky IV? And he kind of laughed, and he said, yeah, I've watched it. And I said, did you cheer for the Russian or did you cheer for Rocky? And he laughed, and he said, I cheered for Rocky because he's a good guy in the movie. And I said, we kind of talked about the way the whole thing was portrayed. And obviously he's a young guy, and so he didn't grow up in the heart of the Cold War, but he knows people who did, because I know it's always told like Russia and America don't like each other and all that stuff. And we just laughed about it. It was fun for me. I didn't turn it into a story. I put a quote up on the message board, but that was it.
You didn't quote him. You didn't like heckle him about Miracle on Ice or anything. Nothing.
No, I didn't. Because you know how it works at Ole Miss. If he ends up going to Florida, they blame me. So, no, I didn't. I didn't do that. We just talked about Rocky IV.
What's he play? I know it's positionless, or at least going that way. But what's the profile here?
He's a wing. He's a 2 or a 3. You know, I mean, Ole Miss. We talked about this, and I think I did put it in the story. I can't remember. Ole Miss kind of plays. I can't believe I'm going to open this can of worms. Kermit's offense is structured a lot like Andy's offense. the 1, the 2, the 3 are somewhat interchangeable. You just need guards who can handle the ball and shoot. If you were to truly pinpoint a label for him, he's a shooting guard. But he's a shooting guard who could also play the small forward and in a pinch could play the 1. Someone made a comment, because of his last name, so he's a poor man's Hustis Fermanovic. No. Totally different player. Number 1, he's a lot better than Eustace. And number 2, he's a wing shooter. Eustace was more of a 4.
So they were compared just because of their background.
Yeah, it's the same way that anytime there's a good white player, they immediately compare him to other white players.
Okay, fair enough. So who's left in this thing? Florida, Georgia Tech.
I'm sorry?
Who's left in this thing? Florida, Georgia Tech.
And Stanford.
This was what number of the visits?
Second, maybe? Or first, I think. This was the first of the visits, of the official visits. He's canceled an official visit to Illinois because they've signed a player at his spot. He said Ole Miss doesn't have anybody like him on the roster once Brian Tyree. They want him to replace Tyree, which tells you so much about what Kermit really wants in his program. He wants size, he wants length, he wants athleticism, and he wants guys who can defend and shoot.
Yeah, you pick to say because Brian's not 6'8" and with the ability to weigh about 220 one day.
No, Brian's 6'1".
Yeah.
Athletic as hell, can jump out of a building, and will play super hard. But we talked about this before. There's some physics involved. If Brian's guarding a guy who's 6'7", and that guy's playing super hard too, the height difference is an issue. You can't just heart and effort your way through it. It doesn't work like that. If it did, Patrick Beverly would be an NBA superstar.
Did you ever forgive him?
No.
Okay.
And I listened to the Lowe podcast. It was really fascinating. I'm going to read the book. Zach Lowe, NBA guy, did a more than an hour podcast with his last name is Anderson. He wrote the book Boomtown about Oklahoma City, the Thunder. He did it in the summer that the Thunder traded James Harden, and it was truly fascinating. And he was kind of around the Thunder for about a 2-year period, and one of the best podcasts I've ever heard. But he talked about a lot about that play and what that play did. One play changed the NBA as much as any play. Talks about how the Thunder were probably on their way, certainly to the finals, probably on their way to a title, and how that trade would not be viewed the way it's viewed today had they won that title.
That makes sense. Where's Zach Lowe now? He used to be with Simmons a long time ago. I don't know what he does now.
I think he's with ESPN.
Okay. I guess technically he was then too, because it was Grantland.
He's really good. He has really good NBA podcasts. He's a good interviewer.
Okay, so anyway.
There was a discrepancy. I hate to do this because I don't want my phone to ring today. There's a discrepancy about whether his dad visited. Here's the key thing. It doesn't matter. His dad's been to Oxford before. His dad did not come to Oxford. According to Sampson, his dad did not come to Oxford over the weekend. His dad is going with him to Florida and Stanford. I don't know about Georgia Tech. The feeling around people who are familiar with this kid is that it's Ole Miss or Florida. He told me he has a favorite. He thinks he probably already knows what he's doing. He's just cementing that decision. I asked him, I assume you're not going to tell me what that decision is, and he said, no, I'm not. Good enough. Don't ask me to guess. I don't know. Not you, Chase, just people in general. What do you think? I don't do the breathless, dramatic eyeball recruiting stuff. I'm not doing it.
Fire.
No flames, no eyeballs. No, ooh, secrecy. Oh boy. Nope.
Can't get one flame.
Nope. It's young people picking a college. It's just not that dramatic.
The numbers will work out too. Let's go ahead and repeat that as well. There's room.
Yeah. There's room.
There's always room.
The fact that Ole Miss and Florida are recruiting a whole lot of the same kids tells you two things. One, they're going to end up splitting them. And two, tells you Ole Miss is recruiting at a pretty high level right now.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing out of all this between Sean Robinson and whatever goes on with Brakefield and even some of the guys in this class and this kid. I mean, there's no doubt Ole Miss has moved up a tier in who it's recruiting. Now, it's got to land enough, but it's up a tier.
No doubt.
I mean, it is what it is. So,
no question about it.
That's what's so funny is you watch these two. I mean, as we kind of get in through this for the day, I mean, you watch these two programs where football's just kind of dwindled. And I get it's a much smaller arena and there's some different things that go into it. But I mean, basketball's going to be a tough ticket this winter.
You know what's hurting?
Sure, football? It's hell going to be a tough ticket next winter.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you what's hurting football. I thought about this last night.
Okay.
And just forgive me as I get on kind of down a meandering path, but it's a podcast, so what the hell?
Sure.
So the Cubs have lost 6 games in a row, lost 2 to Cincinnati, got swept by St. Louis, lost a series of one-run games, and they're out. Realistically, they're out. Season will end on Sunday. And so me doing what I do, I get reflective at the end of a baseball season. Because the truth is, what I really enjoy about the baseball season is the regularity of it, the day after day. I like listening to Pat Hughes and Ron Coomer. I like just the flow of a baseball season. I've said this before. It's the Cubs are sort of how I have marked time in my life, as flawed as that is. It's just the way it is. And so the season's coming to an end, and I can feel it coming to an end. Not like I'm going to have some breakdown or something. I'm perfectly fine. But I can feel it coming to an end, and there's a void coming. But I got reflective about – I was thinking about it, and I thought, this is kind of the end of an era probably the end of Joe Madden. They're going to break this team up to some degree. And I'll always look back 20 years from now, and certainly Carson will look back 50 years from now when I'm gone. And he'll think about this era. But this era of Cubs baseball worked for the same reason that this era of Ole Miss football isn't working. The Cubs were transparent. Theo Epstein took over the day before, or maybe the day of, the St. Louis Cardinals winning the 2011 World Series, and proceeded to tell the fan base, we're about to suck. I'm really suck. Like, everything we got good, we're going to get rid of. We're going to go young. We're going to rebuild. We're going to tank. We're going to suck.
October 25th, 2011. Go ahead.
But we're going to do this. It's going to work. But it's going to take time, and we're going to suck. We're going to rebuild the ballpark. We're going to build around the ballpark. It's going to be a construction zone at first. It's going to be a pain in the ass. But we're going to get there. That's the deal. Now, the Cardinals are about to go win the World Series, and you guys, it sucks. But it is what it is. That transparency was currency with the fan base. I can tell you as a fan, and you know me, I tell people this all the time. They're like, so you went to Ole Miss? I'm like, yeah. You went to Louisiana Monroe? I'm like, yep. You're not emotional about either school? Nope. Why? Because honestly, here's the honest truth. People go, oh, the Thunder. I cheer for the Thunder. But Chase knows this because he's around me. It doesn't matter. When the Cubs lose, it matters. It matters. I feel the Cubs losing. So I don't have the emotional capacity to cheer for another team. I joke around about the Bears and stuff. I watched the Bears game last night. I couldn't have cared less. I will say Khalil Mack is a monster. Anyway, that transparency was currency. It worked. As a fan, and I'm definitely a Cubs fan, it worked. I said, okay, All right, you told me. In 2012, they sucked. In 2013, they sucked. In 2014, at first, they really sucked. And I kind of started for the first time to have some doubts. But they stuck with it. And then they had that fight in Cincinnati where Anthony Rizzo basically challenged the whole Reds dugout. And I said, I'm in. And they started winning. And in 2015, they had this magical season. And we know what happened in 2016. And the truth is, in 2017 and 2018, they were really good. It's just really hard to win the World Series. Ask Bobby Cox. Ole Miss was not transparent. Ole Miss lied to the fans. They don't like that, and I'll get some pushback on this perhaps, but Ole Miss lied to the fans. And when you lie to your fan base, people pay for it. And Ole Miss lied to their fan base. They fired Hugh Freeze, and they said, we're going to conduct a national search. And just follow me here because it's going to come across at first like I'm ripping Matt Luke, and I'm not. You can't tell your fan base we're going to conduct a national search and hire the best guy and then hire the interim coach who was the offensive line coach. Had they been transparent and said, hey, look, here's the deal. We're going to do this. We're going to do a search, but right now the job's not super attractive. And we might have to kind of take a risk on someone who's willing to take a risk on us. And had they, when they hired Matt Luke, said, you know, this wasn't the plan. And frankly, Matt would have a hard time getting another job in the SEC right now. But he's while we're taking a chance on him, he's also taking a chance on us. And we're in a mess and we're in the ditch. And this is going to take some time. And we don't know how long it's going to take, and we don't really know that it's going to work, but we're going to give it everything we've got. And at the very least, he's going to put us on a more stable footing for down the road. And I know that's hard, and fans don't want to hear that, but that is where we are. That's transparency. People say, well, you can't do that in college football because of money. I disagree. I think when you lie to fans, you create this situation down the road where here they are. Matt, here's the truth. Here's the truth. I thought about this a lot last night. Because, again, I'm in here watching Laura and everybody was watching Dancing with the Stars, and I just can't do it. I can't do it. And I was watching Bears and who they playing, the Redskins. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of doing some work and not really paying attention to the game, kind of watching it, kind of thinking a lot. Matt's doing a pretty good job. He really is. He's doing okay. They're rebuilding a program. They're building a much better foundation than what he inherited. They haven't done anything so far this season that's all that devastating. They could have beaten Memphis. Probably didn't have the best offensive game plan in the world, but it was a new quarterback, and the offensive line's not very good, and that does limit what you can do. They whipped Arkansas, who's horrible. They beat Southeastern Louisiana. They weren't particularly impressive doing it, but that's okay. And at the end, I mean, the Cal Ole Miss game, I think the better team won. But at the end of the game, they had a shot against a team that right now today is ranked 15 or 16 in the country, depending on which poll you refer to. They're undefeated. They were in that game. It was competitive, big time. They easily could have won it. He's not doing that. He's not doing a bad job. They have a recruiting plan. They have a pretty good class put together. But he doesn't have, because of what happened with that whole process, he doesn't have the capital that Theo Epstein had. And he's paying for it right now. People are turning on him. They're taking out their anger on him. They're taking out their frustration on him because he's the face of a program that when the people who hired him, Jeffrey Vitter, Ross Bjork, those people, they weren't transparent. And in today's social media age where everyone has an opinion and everyone can express that opinion on publicly, and truth gets out, and half-truths get out, and quarter-truths get out, it's difficult for him to overcome. And the only way Matt Luke's going to survive all of this, any long term, A, win some games, and B, whoever the new guy is who comes in, or if they make the interims the head dudes, they're going to have to tell the truth about the whole deal. Otherwise, I just don't think fans do it. I know it's a really long, convoluted, I told you I'd meander down a path, but I was thinking about that last night. You have to have capital with the fan base. And today, you get that capital by being honest.
You do. And it's not just at Matt, though, too. It's just at the overall athletic program in general, football program in general, whatever. You know what I mean?
It is.
Not me. I'm fixing not all the. And I get we're saying the same thing here, but a lot of people that don't show up, it's not because, hey, Matt Luke's our coach, so I'm not showing up. It's everything. It's
why they don't. It's why there's people keep coming at me with, why is your board so negative? And I thought about that last night too. I mean, literally, I sat in here last night and I poured a glass of bourbon and turned on the football game that I really didn't watch. Like, if you asked me what happened in the Bears game last night, I'm not really sure. I know they scored a defensive touchdown and they couldn't block Khalil Mack, and Trubisky, bless his heart, is just not a very good quarterback. That's what I got out of the game last night. But I was really thinking about, why is everybody so mad? People are very, because of all the things that have happened, there's this caution that they're not going to hire the most qualified chancellor. They're not going to hire the most qualified athletics director. They're going to pull another fast one. That's what people think. Not all people, but a lot of people. They think they're not going to hire the most qualified guy. They're not going to hire somebody that would be able to get another SEC chancellor job or SEC AD job. They're going to hire a good old boy. They're going to keep the country club going. That's why people are mad. It's not because they lost to Cal or they lost at Memphis. Now, there's some of those people, but realistic people know that when you look at the program, the football program itself, if you strip away everything else, it's slowly getting better. It is. And people say, well, they didn't finish the deal on recruits last year. They didn't. And we all know why that is. We all know why that is.
Which is tied into everything else. It's all connected.
The kids at the end, ladies and gentlemen, those kids, the process is different. If you don't know what the hell I'm referring to, I can't help you because I got to feed my family. But those kids, it's different. You got to be. You got to understand that. And so if the program, if the people aren't invested into the program, it's hard to win those kids at the end. That's why I get questions in the mailbag. Hey, what do you think about this kid and this kid and this kid and this kid? The 5, 6, 7 targets at the end. I don't know. I need to know more about the kind of just general overall investment into the program from people. It gets, and like you said, all of that stuff interlaces, intertwines, and it gets kind of complicated. But in terms of people say Luke's done a terrible job, Luke's not done a terrible. Luke's actually done a really good job. The program is better today than it was the day that he inherited it. No question about it. There's more talent. It's more organized. It's more stable. I think it's debatable what kind of a game coach he is at this point in terms of managing an actual football game. But there's a lot of coaches in D1 Power 5 schools that aren't the best game managers in the world. And I'm not saying Matt's a bad one at all. I'm just saying I think he's still developing that skill. He's still fairly young as a head coach.
Yeah, it comes down to the fans that are angry, the fans that are apathetic, the ones that aren't showing, the ones that aren't invested. And this goes all the way from the normal fan to the guys who were needed for some things we're just talking about, frankly. they don't feel like at this time that the program, the athletic program, is being run at the same level of other SEC schools with the same discernment, if you will. And that's what turns people off. It's about the search. It's about all those things. And it's, hey, we're in the toughest division in college football, and we are hindering ourselves. We're not trying. That's what they think. Right, wrong, and different, that's your call. But that is the thought process, that is the attitude, and that is a cancer for Ole Miss right now as they move forward. So,
well, I know we got to go to a break. We're going to go over a little right here. We'll do a long break, but I don't want to stop yet. I want to say this. I thought it was interesting yesterday because it led to some conversations that I had with people. Rich Rodriguez was asked about the Alabama job that he basically took for a night back in December of 07. I guess 06. Rich Rodriguez took that job for a night. Whether it was he or his wife or some combination thereof, changed their mind and elected to stay at West Virginia. And Alabama hired Nick Saban, and you know the rest. This isn't about Rich Rodriguez, but it's about people say, what happened at Alabama? Well, I'll tell you what happened at Alabama quickly. Alabama finally decided that Alabama was at a crossroads in 06. Mike Shula had not worked. Had won 10-win season, but he wasn't winning at a high level. Alabama had lived on Bear Bryant and lived on Bear Bryant and lived on Bear Bryant, and Bear Bryant was gone. And Bear Bryant was becoming an ancient memory to the people that they were recruiting. And Alabama, I wrote a column about it, people still throw it at me to this day, had been passed by so many SEC programs. And Alabama faced the crossroads. Do you continue just to do what they've done? And, hey, look, it's a big-time program. Mike Dubose won 10 games one year. Dennis Franchione won 10 games one year. Mike Shula won 10 games one year. Rich Rodriguez would have won 10 games one year. Hell, you or me could go win 10 games one year at Alabama. That program's that good. But if they wanted to get back to national prominence, they were going to have to hire a great coach, hand him the keys, and get out of the way. Which means some of the big boys, I tell the ones that go to Alabama, and I tell them, I used to play here. I used to come here all the time here. I come up to Tuscaloosa, and I walk into the building, and I have a key to the building. Those people had to go away. They were told, get out. Don't call. We'll call you, and we need some money, and we'll see you on Saturday. They shut the country club down. There's no country club anymore. It's just Nick Saban's program. And they're dominating. Like Rodriguez said, he has built the greatest dynasty in modern-day college football. And he absolutely has. Love him or hate him. Ole Miss is kind of at that crossroads. Not to become the greatest dynasty. Ole Miss doesn't have the resources to ever become the greatest dynasty in college football. They just don't. But Ole Miss is at that crossroads. Are you going to hire the right people, hand them the keys, and say, run it? Or are you going to hand the keys to someone who comes from the good old boy network, who understands the way Mississippi is and Ole Miss is, which is all just code for people fighting for a new chair at the country club table. That's all that is. That's where they are. And I think there's a lot of people that are sitting back saying, I want to see how this ends before I decide whether I'm invested again or not. Because the people that say, well, I'm apathetic, if you're apathetic, you don't even care anymore. If you still care but you're frustrated, you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to swing back to apathetic or whether you're going to swing back to emotionally involved. And I'm not making fun. I'm just saying that's the way it is. But a lot of people are watching. They've taken a step back, and they're watching to see how some of these things turn out. And quite frankly, the stuff about what happens with Matt Luke, with wins and losses, with how big the Vanderbilt game is or isn't, none of that stuff's remotely near as big, as critical, as pivotal as what happens with this chancellor search. What happens with whoever the chancellor is, when he or she comes in, What do they do in terms of academic recruiting? What do they do with the athletics director position? What do they do with a lot of the things that ultimately shape what happens to the university? It's a lot bigger than whether Ole Miss can beat Vanderbilt and Oxford next Saturday night.
Good job. That was, yeah, that's exactly right. We will go to Brian in 1 second. We'll come back, keep this conversation, probably look at a couple of things as well. Before we do that, I'll tell you about Master Cuts Lawn and Landscape, premium lawn care throughout northern Mississippi, but a lot more. Also, they build custom playgrounds, retaining walls, pool decks, outdoor living spaces with paver patios, forestry mulching, and much more. The patch your dream backyard easier than you think. 662-607-7773 for a free quote, or that same free quote at gomastercuts.com.
If you're coming up next weekend for the Vanderbilt game, 6:30 start, and everybody's excited about a night game, or those of you who are coming are excited, you can still have time to hook up with 7 South Tailgating for your tailgating needs. What started as a way to pay for college has become the greatest tailgating service provider at Ole Miss. The team at 7 South are rebels through and through. They take pride in the Grove and the impact their service has on protecting, preserving, and enriching the Ole Miss game day tailgating tradition. Call them directly at 662-321-1682 or visit 7southtailgating.com. Score big points with your kids by signing them up for Oxford Park Commission Youth Basketball. Registration now open for leagues serving ages 5 to 15. The cost to play is just $50 per child. There are discounts available for families with multiple players. The deadline to sign up is October the 4th. Visit oxfordparkcommission.com for more details or to sign up. We're also brought to you by OUB, Oxford University Bank, locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB is home to Kasasa. It's the absolute best cash checking account. With Kasasa, OUB will pay customers 2.5% interest on their balances up to $50,000 and refund ATM fees nationwide. They also have a commercial checking account now paying 1% interest as long as you keep $10,000 in the account. It comes with fully interactive online banking. To learn more, go to liveoxfordbankoxford.com or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured. And we're brought to you by Harry Alexander. Harry is an Oxford-based RE/MAX Legacy Realty agent. It's also a big part of Savannah Square, a new 9-acre development 7/10 of a mile from the Oxford downtown square. It's conveniently located east of North Lamar, just a short stroll from the Midtown Shopping Center. If you're coming up next weekend for the Vanderbilt game, you want to check out Savannah Square, you can. There are several properties at different stages of development. You can also look at the model home at 215 William Street. So get in touch with Harry, SavannahSquareOxford.com or 662-801-5621. And we're brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, Grenada Nissan's the place to go. They've got a complete selection of new and previously owned Nissan vehicles, great lease deals as well. It's GrenadaNissanUSA.com.
Podcast also brought to you by Tyson Drugs and G&M. G&M right there on South Lamar and Oxford, with flu season quickly approaching. They've got flu vaccines available with a $0 copay on most insurance plans. No one has time to wait in line for the overworked pharmacists at the chain drugstores. Stop by one of your locally owned pharmacies where you know someone will be available and dedicated to getting you in and out as quickly as possible. Again, G&M right there on South Lamar in Oxford, 662-236-2222. Brian, good to talk to you. I have to ask this first. Why was there the need to put you in a pair of jorts, the picture on Twitter on Monday afternoon? You moving to Florida on us?
No, I am not moving to Florida. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago on the show, Borky was talking about Borky is expecting a kid here in literally like 3-4 weeks. Like, I think he's under a month. And I was offering Borky advice as someone who does not have kids and has never had kids, and I told him not to dress his kid in jorts because my parents did when I was a kid, apparently, and some pretty tough, I guess, they're not baby photos. I was probably 4 or 5 have come up, and I did not react well to it when I saw them, so I told Borky not to dress his kid in jorts. Richard found that to be hilarious and ordered me a pair, so I'm going to wear them in public at some point for charity, I think.
Ah.
So, yeah, it was a fairly slow day on the show that day, to say the least.
So, a lot of Ole Miss stuff with you guys' show today. Press conferences, obviously, a lot of official stuff, quarterbacks. I'm kind of done with the officials, moving on to, I say Alabama, but really the rest of the season. What kind of read did you get today? And we're taping this on Monday afternoon, running Tuesday morning, because I can't figure out it for the life of me. I talked to Neal about this a good bit on Monday's show. Matt Luke, pretty coy about what Corral may or may not be able to do. Not sure about that yet. But am I missing something? Because if there's even a chance that there is something that could be prolonged later in the season, he can't take a snap against Alabama, right?
Yeah, I think so. But, I mean, they said day to day with bruised ribs. I've never had bruised ribs, but I know if you have cracked ribs, it can be incredibly painful and incredibly hard to play. Just from, I remember some other guys in the past have had it. And Rich Rod said after Saturday's game that Corral told him he was having trouble breathing, like as far as like it being in pain, I would imagine, from the ribs. And so I think it would be incredibly difficult and incredibly painful to play a game through that. But don't you think maybe there's some part of them, and I don't mean this as like, I'm about to say hiding behind, but I don't mean this like in a negative connotation. Don't you think maybe they're using or hiding behind the injury a little bit to maybe just give Plumlee a shot as just to kind of see what they have in them, and maybe they can kind of use the injury as the predominant reason whether it is or not? Because I asked Matt point blank today if Corral is healthy, is he a starter, and he didn't really give me an answer. He kind of said, yeah, and then he said it's too early to make that decision, and went on to talk about how, Corral's health and what can he do if he's healthy, even though I prefaced the question was, if he's healthy, will he start? So they don't seem very committed on him being the starter, health or unhealth, going forward. At least that's not the vibe I caught today. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think it was very similar. And I'll be honest. I mean, if I'm Grant Tisdale, I'd like at least a shot too. I mean, in some ways, look, Ole Miss is not going to win this football game on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. So it's sort of a dress rehearsal in a really weird way. And I know that'll piss some people off, but it's kind of the way I feel about it. If Corral is not 100%, because, too, he's got to run to really be effective. He's got to use his legs. He's never going to sit back and just be a statue in the pocket and be at his most effective. It's almost one of those deals where you almost want to get Plumlee and Tisdale reps because, we talked about, or Rich Rod talked about how the play call really dictated who went into the game, but then once Plumlee went in and kind of energized everybody, they kept him in for that last series as well. I mean, Tisdale was the number two the number two quarterback, the top backup out of fall camp. Kincaid Dent was early, he got hurt, and then Plumlee, because he got to campus so late, he was behind Tisdale. So in some ways, I almost kind of want to see what Grant has too. It feels like one of those days where you could just play a couple quarterbacks, get them a lot of snaps, and see sort of how do they react to whatever happens on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because I remember I think it was on here, we were talking going into the Memphis week, and one of the things we were discussing or debating or whatever was who is the who's the backup quarterback, say if Corral twists an ankle 15 minutes or at some point in the Memphis game has to miss a drive series, whatever. And we both kind of agreed it was Tisdale. I think they trusted him more. He seemed very polished. About a week and a half before, you and I sat there and listened to him talk like he was the backup quarterback. He's been there longer, had the benefit of spring ball and all that. So it seemed like they trusted Tisdale more. And I thought that was the part of this past Saturday that kind of flew under the radar, that it sounded like Plumlee got in the game because of the play call. Like it might have been Tisdale if they didn't want to do a quarterback run. And then, of course, he breaks a 47-yarder, and the rest is kind of history. I mean, he goes they score a play later, then he goes 7 for 7 on the final drive. And, now he's kind of got a weird dynamic going on here. But I do agree in the sense that, if they're not going to win the game, it's probably not going to be very close. Do you try to get all three of them reps, or if they rule Corral out, do you go with Plumlee and Tisdale just to see? But then again, how much of it, even if you do it, and I think it's probably the right call, how much of it can you really gauge from it, because that's a really good Alabama defense against a not very good offensive line? Like basically what I'm saying is they're going to be outmanned, so how much can you gauge from them going up against one of the better defenses in the country?
Well, you have to read that it's not going to rattle them past this week. You can't let it beat them twice. You can't let it affect if they potentially have to play against Vanderbilt the next week. So it has to be one of those deals where you want to see presence. I think in a lot of ways it's almost not throwing them out to the wolves. I mean, Ole Miss can score some points, but at the same time, how do they handle the negative things? How do they handle the negative energy? How do they handle the crowd? Because what we don't know with Plumlee is everything's been hair on fire to this point. It was a run and then a 2-point conversion. I mean, I do know one thing. If Ole Miss is going to win football games, they've got to give Jerry and Ely the ball more than one time in the second half. He had one touch and one score. But we don't know what Plumlee actually does when he's just running the offense. Because, look, it wasn't a prevent from Cal, but they were certainly allowing some clock to run, keeping everything sort of to the middle of the field, giving up some of the short stuff, and then tackling. So I do think we need to kind of see what Plumlee can do from that regard. You were standing by me on Saturday, and look, because of the way the run happened and then the touchdown immediately, there was a lift. It was on the sidelines, it was on the stands, and this is not a fair question. But how much of that was just results-based, and how much of that did you feel like was something that sort of Plumlee was energizing too from a leadership or from just an energy standpoint on Saturday?
I definitely think it wasn't just results-based. I know the first play was him breaking a long run, and then it was kind of before you could even gauge how the crowd reacted to him going in the game, they were cheering for him busting the run. But I mean, you were standing there, too, and we said it in the moment. Like, that wasn't just because he broke off a run. Like, you could sense the different energy in the stadium from the people that were there once he got into the game. And it was almost like because they had such a bad third quarter and such a bad second half, it was almost like they were cheering, yes, the run, but also just seeing someone and something different. Because I had people, and, like, I'm not trying to give credence to social media as being any reflection of real life, but even when Corral was 16 of 23 at halftime for, 168 and no turnovers, his first half was kind of even still just left a bad taste in his mouth because he misses those two guys down near the red zone towards the end of the second quarter and, missed a couple guys, missed two throws there, I would say. And, it led to a field goal instead of a touchdown. So even when he had a pretty good half, he missed two open receivers, which has become kind of a common thing as inaccuracy has kind of showed this year. So I think it was a little bit of both. I don't think it was just results-based. I think people were happy to see something different, and then that different just happened to have success literally immediately.
I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but in some ways I feel like there is a segment of the fan base that's grading him on a curve other than a redshirt freshman quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like they're grading him on a much stricter thing, and I don't know if it's because, he did play some last year, and at least it was a known name and a big-time recruit. I don't know if it's because at least it's not his first year in the program. I don't know. Maybe it's his personality. But it doesn't seem like he's necessarily, and now some of it is because he has to do so much. I mean, the quarterback at Ole Miss, no matter whom it is, this week or next week, because of that defense, the way they're not stopping anybody through the air right now, you've got to score, and you've got to score a pretty good bit. You've got to keep pace. You've got to try to set rhythm. You've got to stay on schedule. There's a lot going on right there for either a freshman or a redshirt freshman quarterback when they're in the game for Ole Miss right now.
I think it's all of it, though. It's not only just that he played, 4 games of pretty limited action last year. Isn't part of it, he was a huge land for Matt Luke at the time. When the program needed some momentum, Luke got the job. Remember, his commitment was, it was big. It kind of sent ripple waves and was the centerpiece of that class. And then even with Jordan Ta'amu having another year, everyone knew Corral was the guy of the future going forward. And so while he hasn't played much football, like you said, he's definitely not being graded on a redshirt freshman scale. I think he's falling victim to him being thrust into a leadership role, as Matt Luke talked about at SEC Media Days and all summer, coupled with the fact that people have known he's going to be the guy for a while, probably coupled with a little bit that Ole Miss, with the exception of Shea Patterson for a brief period, has had veteran quarterbacks the last few years. I mean, a 21-year-old JUCO kid is a lot different than a redshirt freshman, true freshman, whatever. So I think it's all of that, and it's just created these expectations that don't really breed patience. And so that's where Ole Miss really has, if you're looking at this from a long-term standpoint, that's really the fascinating dynamic here because, yeah, I think they should try both of them out, but are you really going to pull the plug on Corral this early as a redshirt freshman quarterback, a bad offensive line? Are you going to pull it 4 games into his first real season? It's almost like as far as judging and grading him, I'd like a full season of data, but at the same, and I think the staff would too, but at the same time, if the backup is performing well, at a certain point you have to play him.
Take a break in our talk with Brian and tell you about Community Mortgage, Oxford, Memphis, Soto County, and Chattanooga. Underwriting and processing is done in Memphis. They're getting local underwriting that understands your market, a leader in condo financing, the float down option, and with rates as low as they've been in about 2 years. Great time to talk to Jason about refinancing, about purchasing there with Community Mortgage. 662-234-2704 or JLOWE@communitymtg.com.
Join the Ole Miss football team back at the Vaught for an SEC showdown and homecoming on October the 5th versus Vanderbilt. For more information, visit OleMissTix.com. The 2019-20 Ole Miss hoops season just around the corner. Don't miss any of the action of Coach Yo's women's basketball team and Coach Kermit Davis's men's team this season in the Pavilion. For tickets, visit OleMissTix.com. Join the Ole Miss volleyball team back at Gillum on Friday, September the 27th at 6:30 p.m. as they take on the Tennessee Volunteers. For more information, visit OleMissSports.com. And the Ole Miss soccer team back on the pitch on Sunday, September the 29th as they take on the Auburn Tigers at 2 p.m. Admission is free, so bring the family out and enjoy Rebel soccer. We're also brought to you by John Edwards of Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. If you've been thinking about that golf trip with the guys you'll never forget, maybe an anniversary trip she'll never forget, maybe you want to book a trip like so many of our other listeners have booked through John, get in touch with him. It's simple. All you do is you call him or send him an email. You give him some parameters, give him a budget. He'll give you options that you would not find on your own. And no, you don't have to live in or near Memphis to take advantage of the services. You need a phone so that you can call 901-494-3387 or some sort of an internet connectivity device where you can send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. He'll take care of the rest. First-time clients can save $50 off their first booked trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast. I'll have my mailbag out at some point tomorrow. The podcast is also brought to you by the people who sponsor that mailbag, which is the Westin Jackson. It is home to Soul Spa, the ultimate luxury spa experience in downtown Jackson. It's also home to Estelle Wine Bar and Bistro, where you can sip on a creative craft cocktail, enjoy their curated wine list. It's open for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Chef Caden's mission is to connect guests with the community through local partnerships, so gather at Estelle at the Westin Jackson tonight.
Yeah, I can't see a scenario where he's straight up Wally pipped off of this. That kind of boggles my mind on a season that is already struggling. He is coming into the thing. He was the most highly regarded. He had the experience. It feels like you have to stick with him this season whenever he's 100% healthy and let him play it out. But now, Plumlee does something crazy. Tisdale does something crazy. If nothing else, it's added another little interesting element to this team when there's so much right now team versus program for Ole Miss. Neil and I spent a good bit of time on it Monday. What did you think the attendance was on Saturday? Where did you predict it at?
If you ask Richard Cross, he will tell you that I'm shockingly bad at this. But 40, 42, is that too generous?
It's probably a little generous. That was my first guess, too. However, I mentioned this to Neil. When we're in the press box, we can't see just how empty sections A, B, and C are from up there.
Right.
So I do think it's a little lower. Vanderbilt's not going to be a ton next week. And here's the interesting thing about Vanderbilt next week is they get a 6:30 start. So, and I don't mean this negatively. I just mean this in general. There's really no excuse, if you will. The weather is going to be probably pretty good. It's going to be 2 weeks later in the year, so it's not going to be crazy hot, we don't think. It's 6:30. It's an SEC team. Nobody's grading Ole Miss against the Alabama result right here. They're trying to get back to 500 for whatever reason that means or doesn't mean. It feels like it's a 100% litmus test game at that time slot from the standpoint of, frankly, how many people are still somewhat bought in and how many people just aren't coming to games no matter what at this point.
I agree with definitely with what you're saying as far as it being a test. But just with the feel of the way last weekend was, and that Plumlee, the two drops from Plumlee and them coming back in the final sequence and all that, really was just kind of a short-term diversion, in my opinion, or cover or whatever you want to call it, from what was a really just kind of depressing scene. The game was getting away from them. There was no one in the stands. The crowd wasn't into it. It was really kind of a fairly accurate shot of where the program seems to be right now. And so I say that to say, yeah, it's probably a test, but doesn't it feel like you kind of already know the answer to the test and how it's going to go? It's probably going to be more of people aren't coming to games and they aren't coming back. I mean, that seems like it feels more that way than the fact that you might have 45 or 50 at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I don't see any way you have 45 or 50 at Vanderbilt. I think you're probably searching into the 30s, even with the time slot that you have. And, you know, what happened was Plumlee, the officiating, Ole Miss getting back in that game, it's still masking. So that kind of masked the way the defensive secondary played, made Chase Garbers look much better than Chase Garbers is.
He set 4 career highs.
Yeah. Oh, did he have 4? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I believe it was completions, yardage, touchdowns, and there was one more. I think just total offense.
Okay. So, here's my question with that. Obviously, Tua, whatever. I'm not going to. That is what it is. Burrow is what it is, and Auburn is going to be a prohibited favorite against Ole Miss, even though Bo Nix is nowhere in the category of the same kind of quarterback. That secondary, though, the way it's playing, because frankly, the kid from CeeLi even had some results. Now, Ben Hicks was awful, and Starkle had a couple moments, but he sucks too. How big of a problem is this secondary for Ole Miss in these winnable games? Vanderbilt did score 30-something against LSU. I mean, can that kid exploit it? I mean, does it take away the ability to pull some sort of upset and get some sort of pull in a positive direction later in the season simply because they're selling out to stop the run and doing a decent job, but they can't guard anybody right now?
Yeah, I think it is because it's I think part of what you saw and part of what we were talking about up there as we were watching it unfold on Saturday is it's a twofold problem when they can't cover because they're struggling to generate a consistent pass rush with 3-4 guys. And then you're definitely, if you're Mike McIntyre, you're hesitant to blitz because you don't trust them to cover. And at the same time, if they're not covering and the guy's got all day to throw as well, like you're not going to get very good results. But isn't this a little bit surprising? If we were sitting here talking again on August 30th or the day before the Memphis game or anything like that, if you had to guess, they would have struggled to stop the run more so than the pass just because you have Miles Hartsfield, Jalen Jones, however healthy that knee is, Jalen Julius, a lot more experienced guys that you feel like Keidron Smith, that you kind of feel like you knew what you had. Like, to me, this is more surprising than if they are giving up 6 yards of play on the ground at this point in the year, which they're not. I'm just saying it would have shocked me less if they were bad against the run as opposed to against the pass. This is a lot more surprising to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be better coached, and they are better coached. They're in the right spot more than they were last year. There's no doubt about that. There's a little bit of a plan because that is the troubling thing for Ole Miss right now is that they're executing McIntyre's plan, which is stop the run, get some pressure when you can, affect the quarterback. I mean, they did sack the kid 4 times on Saturday, but they didn't finish a lot, and then guys just running free. Jalen Jones does not look like the pre-injury Jalen Jones. I hope he gets back to it. I really do. I root for that, but it just doesn't look like that way right now. Hartsfield has really struggled. Yeah, they're not getting those jumps out of some of the veterans that maybe we had anticipated. And when you look at the quarterbacks left, that's what's just kind of that was the concerning thing is, you know, do they make the Vanderbilt kid look like Garbers looked the other day? Does Kellen Mond not feel pressure the way he felt it against Auburn and kind of get hot? It's just that's the kind of thing that will really spiral this because I'll be honest, this thing turns into a completely different direction if they don't find a way to beat Vanderbilt in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And you think the kid, I mean, to your point, I know it's still a small sample size, and they probably played one of their worst games as far as the secondary against Cal. But to your point, the kid chasing Virgil or whatever the kid's chasing Virgil from CeeLi had success too. So if those guys are having that level of success, I know Kellen Mond hasn't looked very good, but do you think if those guys are doing it, the kid from Vanderbilt and Mond can't do it?
Well, just because they're going to have more weapons at wide receiver, too. I mean, they're going to run more free. There's going to be more issues on that side. So, no, it's an interesting week for Ole Miss because, I mean, you can't do anything against them, really holding anything against them this week whatsoever. And then they turn into a game where everything's kind of apathetic, angry, take your pick, depending on the fan you're talking about. It turns into chaos next week.
Yeah, it does, because like you said, I mean, you know what the result's going to be this week. In some ways, I'm not about to spin this as, you know, it's a blessing Ole Miss is going for them to go play Alabama on the road at Bryant-Denny Stadium. But from the sense that you kind of know you're not going to win or really compete in the game, doesn't it help a little bit to kind of be able to figure some things out at quarterback and some other stuff before you play that Vanderbilt game? Because you got to win that thing. Because like you said, if they don't do that, this takes a whole nother turn, and chaos is a good word for it. So does it help a little bit that they have a week to just kind of not necessarily focus on the scoreboard or winning the game and all of that? Of course, they're going to try to win the game. I'm not suggesting that. But focus on some other things when you're outmatched to kind of get ready for a game that you can win in Vanderbilt.
It's the strangest thing.
Crazy?
It's the strangest thing in the world. And I guess with a 32-point line, it just sort of is what it is. It feels almost like a mid-season preseason game. That's the way it feels. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but that's what it feels like. Where you just try to get some continuity, you try to get some things to work, you look at the quarterback situation, and you see where it goes. So I don't know. It's a great question. We'll see. But
you mentioned going. I think it's interesting. You mentioned talking about you needing to go to Corral if he's healthy long term. But how long's the leash? Because if Plumlee plays like that and like that's all most people have seen, like even if you do go to Corral, what's the leash like in your opinion? Like, is it a half? Is he struggle for a quarter and you pull him? Like, what does that look like, assuming he's healthy?
It's why I think this week you got to play him, because I get that it's Alabama, but Helinski did some nice things against Alabama, 2 weeks ago for South Carolina. I mean, that's the funny part of this. Alabama has the best offense in the country. Their defense is just kind of good right now. It's not elite. It's not great. You can, in theory, do some things against Alabama defensively. It's hard for me, though, to put tons on Plumlee until we actually see it. You know what I mean? Like, I need to see some drives. I need to see that it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to throw a bunch of short passes. I mean, I think there's some ability there, but he's still really new. He's still learning some offense stuff. I don't even know necessarily if he can run the entire playbook. Rich Rod hasn't necessarily said one way or the other. So I find some of that interesting. But no, you can't give a complete and utter leash. I mean, you have to play the quote unquote best quarterback. You've got to at least try it out, I think. Because Corral, while I think he's been fine. I think fine's the word. I think solid's the word. It hasn't been great. It hasn't been terrible. I do think that it has been just bad enough, or not good enough, if you will, to open up this conversation and go, well, I mean, if Plumlee puts it together or Tisdale puts it together, at least give it a shot. But now that's the thing, too. I think you've got to play Tisdale a little bit. I don't think you can automatically just go to Plumlee here and let that be the thing, because I think Tisdale's earned some snaps, and otherwise you're putting him in kind of a weird situation if you just want to be real frank about it.
I agree. And in that, along those lines, in terms of going with Corral, it's almost like you play him this week, see what he does. I agree. Try to play Tisdale and Plumlee if you can. But I guess the way to phrase it, does he survive a third quarter like he had against Cal if that happens in one of the first two quarters at Vanderbilt? Does he get pulled?
Probably so, because the seed's planted. Rightly or wrongly, it feels like the seed is planted right now that another guy can potentially do that. I think I agree with you. I think that's the way this thing goes. So the last couple minutes, you were out there for a few days. How did you feel like the Sanderson Farms win in Jackson over the weekend? From a tournament
I think it went well. I think pleased. I think, aside from a minor weather hiccup on Thursday, most everything's on schedule. The golf course was in good shape. They seemed to get pretty good feedback from the guys that played it. I think those guys really liked those greens. Man, I really jinxed our boy Sung Jae. I texted Richard. So I went on Sunday, and once Sung Jae made the turn at one back, I decided I was going to follow the back nine. And so I kind of started following him, and I really kind of got into it. I was like, he's going to do this. And, you and I are going to ride his coattails to fame, since we played with him in that tour event. And I texted Richard when Sung Jae finished 18. I said, if Munoz par 17, no shot he birdies 18 today, and he knocked it stiff and birdied 18 and won the playoff. But it was compelling. There was a lot of people out there. I think it turned out really well. This was a big step forward for that tournament. Standalone event, Masters invitation, 7 figures goes to the winner. I think it went well, and I think they're going to continue to get a stronger field, which I think is good for Jackson, good for the event, and good for golf in the state.
It's really in good shape next year. It's moving to October 1st to 4th. It's the week after the Ryder Cup, to get some really good American players that don't make the Ryder Cup team, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It feels like they've got a chance to really kind of grab 5 or 10 of those guys next year. The week after,
yeah, you're exactly right.
No, it's huge. You know, they up the purse. It's a standalone. They got Snedeker there. That I guess in theory they got at least Ches Reavie to sign up, even though he didn't show up. They got Zach Johnson. There were dudes there. It had a different feel than it has in years past. Now I will say, I mean, all jokes aside about Sungjae, and this is nothing against the guy that won. I thought that tournament needed Sungjae to win. Rookie of the year, wins the tournament, gets his first win. I just thought a guy that's probably going to be a stalwart on the tour for a long time, I thought it's not a huge deal. It's nothing that's going to hurt the tournament per se, but I did think that would have added a little extra icing if he could have pulled it off and sort of been the face of this first year for the different style of tournament that it was.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been a more compelling winner, but it's just tournaments. You kind of have some years that are like that and some years that aren't, but I agree. Sungjae would have been a more compelling winner. I like Munoz. I think he's a nice player, but I think if you're betting on someone to be a long-term mainstay on the tour, it's, of course, Sungjae. And, that guy may be top 40 in the world and still playing every week. I mean, he played 34 events last year. That's insane. But he's a good player. They're benefiting now from both veteran tour guys playing this event because it's a standalone, because they need to have the rule about playing different events. Because, like you said, it'll be right after the Ryder Cup next year. And then if you mix that in with the crop of talent coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, jockeying for position before the reshuffle, you get a really strong field.
It's going to be word of mouth now, in my opinion. Players going to tell other guys, hey, it's not too bad. If you got to play an extra tournament, why don't you go to Jackson? It's fine. It's in October. It's not going to be that hot. Hey, go do that a little bit. I do think there's a semblance of kind of telephone game here that's going to help the tournament moving forward. Because, the crowds were good. The weather was pretty pleasant, like you said, other than that Thursday that happened. It was a really good foot forward for that tournament as it kind of transitions into a standalone and hopefully holds that spot. It's already got secured through Sanderson Farms through 2026, I think. And then I think there's even a possibility that gets extended at some point fairly soon.
Yep, and, tour events are obviously more stable than you see on the Korn Ferry. You saw it kind of move in and out of Oxford quick. But there's not a lot of – there's not all tour events have a decade of stability. They signed that 10-year deal in 2016 and through 2026. Not every tournament has the benefit of that. And that tournament was really – its stability was flimsy before Sanderson picked it up, and they've grown it into a really, really nice event. And I think if they continue to do the same things, they've taken a great interest in taking care of the players when they're there, making sure they have different options to do stuff off the golf course if they want to, and things like that. And they continue to do the little things right, and I think it'll continue to grow. They've gotten results, and I think it'll continue to get bigger.
Yeah. Appreciate it, bud.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thanks to Brian for talking to us. Again, that was recorded last night, but obviously nothing's changed before then. And this morning, the podcast is also brought to you by Visit Oxford. Visit oxfordms.com. Go to the events page, see everything going on in town this week, including the art crawl today from 6 to 8 at the Powerhouse. Got a South Talks lecture on Thursday at the Tupelo Room, the Bernard Observatory, and Thacker Mountain Radio every Thursday night from 6 to 7:30 at Off Square Books. Bookmark the site at visitoxfordms.com. See where to stay, what to eat, and more, including all the events every single week that you are in town. Again, that's visitoxfordms.com/events.
I'll be taping a Mind on My Money podcast presented by Pinnacle Trust a little later this morning. Pinnacle Trust is also home to Pinnacle Trust 401k advisory services. If your company's 401k is not performing at a rate that you're pleased with, get in touch with the people at Pinnacle Trust 401k advisory services. They will conduct a complimentary, no-obligation benchmarking and analysis of your current 401k plan. Mention that you heard about Pinnacle Trust on the Oxford Exxon podcast. You'll get 10% off your first year's fees. It's pintrust.com. That's PINN trust.com. Also brought to you by Southern Craft Stove and Tap, located off Highway 7 and Sisk Avenue. Southern Craft Stove and Tap places an emphasis on food and atmosphere, mixing the quality of fine dining with the come-as-you-are environment. Featuring 30 craft beers and offering a high-quality selection of cuisine and libations, Southern Craft Stove and Tap has you covered for any occasion. Join them for lunch, dinner, Sunday brunch, or have your favorites catered out. Catering orders placed online currently get $25 off any order totaling $100 or more. So avoid the chaos of parking on the square Head over and experience carefully crafted dishes with your favorite Southern ingredients. That's Southern Craft Stove and Tap, Highway 7 and Sisk Avenue in Oxford. Podcast also brought to you by Jackson Beer Company. They've got 10 beer taps for sampling and growler fill. It's also a place where you can mix your own pack of beers from the single shelf with more than 350 beers to choose from. Ask about the kegs to go. Join the text program for special deals. Text JBEER, that's JBEER, to 51660. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter at Jackson Beer Co., on Instagram at Jackson Beer Company. 662-638-3642 is the number. They're located at 1801 Jackson Avenue West. It is the place to go if you are looking to stock your beer as you come in next weekend for the Vanderbilt game. Could not recommend any place more than that.
Got picks coming your way on Thursday. We'll look at a few lines here in the back half of the show. The Cowbears, after their trip to Oxford, they've got a short week. They're back at home on Friday night against Arizona State. That is a 9:30 Central Time start, and they are a 5-point favorite over the Sun Devils, led by Herm Edwards. So just a little line there for Cal.
I'll say this. Yeah. Pretty impressed with Wilcox.
He's done a really good job at that program.
They have a culture. They have an identity.
Look, that's more than half the battle in college football is know who you are. Our message board was talking about that with Wisconsin yesterday. They don't have great recruiting rankings, but they're a top 10, top 15 program because they know exactly who they are, exactly the kind of kid they're trying to recruit, and they develop and evaluate like crazy at a certain number of positions. That's it.
I tell you what, I don't know if you watched any of it. I was sitting. You didn't because you were covering a football game, and I was sitting in a bar in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
That game was on. It was an ass kicking. Wisconsin absolutely kicked Michigan's ass at the line of scrimmage. I know everybody's obsessed with the Shea Patterson stuff. I get it. I enjoyed Shea getting beat the way he did. I can't imagine his dad's meltdown. That being said, I'm not sure Tom Brady could have won that game for Michigan on Saturday. They got beat badly at the line of scrimmage.
It's 35-0 at one time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that identity that Wisconsin has, this physical identity. Now, that takes time to develop and commitment to develop. And it doesn't always work. Brett Bielema says hello.
But they know who they are.
Here's the other thing. Building a college football program and making it a power is very hard. Brett Bielema won at Wisconsin. He's now working with Bill Belichick. Belichick doesn't hire stooges to be part of his franchise there in New England. He couldn't get it done at Arkansas. Just couldn't get it done. It's hard.
You have to know who you are, and you have to operate at peak efficiency. Everything has got to be toward one goal.
It's why
you can't have noise.
Yeah, at the risk of getting into this where people come at me with you're doing, I'm not defending anybody. I'll say this: Matt Luke's a big boy, and if Ole Miss moves on from Matt Luke tomorrow, or in 3 years, or in 6 years, or any time in between, he's going to walk away with a lot of money. He's a big boy, going to be okay. But you got to have – it's why if people ask me this all the time, I get the mailbag question. I've got like 5 of them about this, and I'm going to figure out how to address it. What would you do if? Well, obviously no one's going to consult me. But if I don't have all the other things stable, if I don't know who the chancellor is, if I don't know who the AD is, if I don't kind of have a feel for the mission statement, I'm going to ride this thing out. Now, I think one of the places where Matt hurts himself is that he's not great at being I think he's a good football coach. I don't think he's great at being the face of a program in terms of delivering a message, a nuanced, passionate message to a fan base. I don't think that's his strength yet. And frankly, that's a strength that most people don't have. But the fact that through all this time the kids continue to play super hard for him tells you that he's doing something. And you got to be careful when the answer to everything is not let's just fire everybody. Let's just clean the house. Because right now, if you do something right now that wipes out a recruiting class, well, now you're just self-inflicting the wounds. And the whole, just promote Rodriguez or promote McIntyre. Based on what?
Yeah, the pieces have to be in place to make the right hire whenever that time comes. If you make the wrong decision and everything else isn't in place, well, then you're potentially running this thing 3, 4, 5 years instead of 1 year. You know what I mean? You're just prolonging it. You're just spinning your wheels at that point.
You have to be careful that you, in an attempt to take steps forward, don't fall so far back that you're back at the bottom of the ditch again.
Yeah.
People say, so you're saying Matt Luke's the answer? I'm not saying that. You're saying that Matt Luke deserves more time? I don't use the word deserve. I'm trying not to use the word fair. I don't think those are good words in college sports. But if you're going to treat it like a business, and it absolutely is one, you better make smart business decisions about personnel, because sometimes firing all of the personnel is not the way to go. That's so much of this fire Matt Luke stuff is emotional. In much the same way that hiring Matt Luke was an emotional political power play. And that's what's pissed people off. That's why people have this distrust of the chancellor thing. Because I'll say this again at the risk of ruining your day. Thank goodness you have stuff to do where you can ignore your phone. If you end up hiring somebody that could not get another chancellor's job anywhere in the SEC, at the very least, you're being risky. At the most, you're just repeating history. If that person hires an AD who could never even get an interview at another SEC school to be the AD, at the very least, it's a risk, and at the very worst, it's repeating yourself. At some point, you being Ole Miss has to say, hey, what are we? We're an institution of higher learning that has a high-level athletics program that is the front door to the university. There's a lot of those around. Let's look at the ones that work and try to emulate it. It's not complicated. Right now, I think Ole Miss is guilty of overthinking this to the point of potentially...
It's paralysis.
To the point of a potential paralysis / catastrophic decision. It's an institution of higher learning. That's what it is. It's a business. You're in the business of recruiting. Forget the athletics for a minute. You're in the business of recruiting young people. That's your business. For all the academics on the campus, that it's about academic freedom and all these other catchphrases. You're so full of shit, you don't know what to do. I mean, people like some of you guys out there that are tenured academic people, you're so stupid. You're so out of touch with reality. Let your enrollment drop 600-700 kids a year and see how much academic freedom you have. You're in the business of recruiting kids. You got to sell the kids, and you got to sell the kids' families. So look around and see who does it well, and then emulate them. It ain't hard. You have an athletics department that is the front door. It is the front window to your institution. Whether it should or shouldn't be, another debate. Have it all you want. Go for it. Call a summit. Have a meeting. Let everybody hear themselves. Whatever. It is what it is. Look around the country at the people who get it right, figure out what it is that they're doing, and then copy them. Hire people that are like the people that those places hired. Give them the keys, give them autonomy, and let them get to work. That's the solution to this. It's not hard. Frankly, it doesn't take a lot of courage, but it's going to mean some people who talk like this, even though there's no real reason for them to talk like this, surrendering their spot at the country club table for the betterment of the institution. And if they won't, you're going to repeat it again. The bottom line.
I've been told by a couple different people, or let me say, just the thought going around is that the first cuts have been made, that it's been cut into the single digits for the chancellor position. I have no clue who made it. I talked to several people last night. Information very, very, very tight at the moment. Everything's been pretty hush-hush, so I don't know, but I do believe that process has taken that step to this point. Maybe it'll leak out at some point. Maybe somebody will decide they would like me to know and tell me. But either way, as of this moment, I do believe that process has reached that stage of the situation, which is again on schedule. If nothing else, they have done that. They have stayed on their schedule, even though it's just taken forever. So
I'll say this: the fact that it hasn't gotten out makes me very skeptical about the process.
Yeah, there's been no leaks, and there have been no leaks to some people who I thought, oh my God, they would be the first one told, and they don't know crap.
That makes me.
It is quiet.
That makes me suspicious. It does. I hope I'm wrong. I'm naturally cynical. I'll admit
Well, it is a little weird. I mean, I was able to basically in one morning get 25 applicants that at least made it to that part of the process, and after about a day and a half, I have no name whatsoever that made the next cut. None. Don't know. Completely in the dark.
Yeah. I'll say this. I don't know the names. There's the person at Auburn, supposedly, that's a candidate.
Yep.
There's the person at Clemson that is supposedly a candidate.
Yep.
If I'm Ole Miss, people like that, those are the people that I'm after. I've tried to not endorse anybody because, number one, I would kill them. Number two, I've said that I wouldn't. But if I'm Ole Miss, I look at Auburn, I look at Clemson, and I go, well, it's kind of working there. Enrollment, as someone who has kids going through the processes. I have one who's a freshman. I have one in college. I have one who's a junior in high school who's just starting the what schools to look at deal. I can tell you that at Auburn and Clemson, it's hard. They have so many kids trying to get in those schools right now. And academics, I mean, athletics is a big part of that.
Robert
Obviously,
Jones is the provost at Clemson, and Bill Hardgrave is the provost at Auburn.
Yeah, Jay Tate raves about Bill Hardgrave, says that he's got a legitimate chance to be I don't know what they call him, the president or chancellor.
I think it's the president at Auburn.
Yeah, whatever, the top dude. Got a real chance to be that guy. Why those names don't have more traction publicly at Ole Miss is beyond me. It's stunning to me.
Vanderbilt's been very, very open and transparent in their chancellor search.
Who has?
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Yet Ole Miss keeps it quiet because attorneys in town want the job. Oh, I mean, I become public enemy number one here real quick and start saying stuff that is ruin Chase's day.
Vanderbilt released that.
Just so you know how it works, they don't come to me and go, how come you said that? They go to Chase and say, how come he said that? If you're an attorney in Oxford, that means you're a good attorney. It doesn't make you qualified to be a chancellor.
Yeah. It was one of my favorite message board posts last week.
Hold on one second. I'm a sports writer. I'm a pretty good one. I'm qualified to get a job at the Tennessean or somewhere. I can handle that. No sweat. They couldn't pay me, but I'm qualified. No one's going to offer me the position of bank president today. Nor should they. I wouldn't be qualified. And yes, the comparison is exactly the same. Get somebody who's run an institution similar to the one that Ole Miss is. It's not complicated. It shouldn't be a political thing, and it shouldn't be it shouldn't be treated the way that it's being treated. Go figure it out. And this isn't about Robbins. I wouldn't know Robbins if he walked in the door. I have no idea what the guy looks like. I really know nothing about him, other than he's running a place that's similar to what Ole Miss is, just bigger. Auburn is similar to what Ole Miss is. It's an institution of higher learning. Clemson, same thing. Figure that out. If you're going to hire somebody who's a politician, shit, we live in Mississippi. We're about to elect Tate Reeves the governor. If you're a good politician, this is the state to do it because supply and demand, you can win. Run for Senate. We got a clown show as our senator. I'm not sure she could spell clown show. Run against her. Does it make you qualified to be a chancellor at an institution of higher learning? I apologize for ruining your day.
All good. It's fine. A few news and notes here. Really not a whole lot else. But Ole Miss baseball's recruiting class ranked number 2 in the country by a couple different people. Saw that come out. D1 baseball, or I think D1 baseball, Perfect Game anyway. Perfect Game has Ole Miss with 4 of the top 16 incoming freshmen in the country. Although Jerry Neely's one of those, and I think that's a little strange. But anyway, Ely, Connor Walsh, Derek Diamond, and Hayden Dunhurst. So just a quick little thing there. But yeah, no, what I was going to say was there was a message board post last week where Vanderbilt had put out this huge PDF on how the process works, how they're going about it, what they're looking for, tons of different stuff. Kind of a on steroids version of that thing that we looked at from Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. And somebody goes, hey, why don't we just let them run their search, and whoever finishes number 2, let's hire that guy. That'll work. That's fine. Just do it that way. But, I mean, there's the belief that Vanderbilt's going to hire a very successful president. I don't think anyone would argue that Vanderbilt will probably do a pretty good job in that regard. Football coaches, I don't know. Presidents, yeah, I trust them. 100%.
Well, only one person's ever won in football there. It's a really brutal job.
Yeah. They got a lot of academic wins.
Tons.
Yeah. You know,
we started with transparency. We finished with transparency. I'm telling you, transparency is important in public relations.
So
you want people to what's the term? Sort of sack up and, hey, we're going to get in the Houston. Who do you want in the foxhole with you? If you want people to get in the foxhole with you and fight your way out of a ditch of a foxhole, you got to be honest with them. When the guy gets in the foxhole with the guy and says, hey, what's our plan? I can't tell you that. Put it on the line for me here real quick, but I can't tell you what the objective is. I'm kind of out. Tell people the truth.
Yeah, gonna need a little more than that. So
that's where this is failing right now, and it is failing so far. It's failing because no one really knows what's going on, and that makes them distrust because of things that have happened in the past.
Yeah. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the podcast. RebelGrove.com, a lot there. The basketball story we referenced, some football items from yesterday, and much more coming as well. So we appreciate Brian with his time, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.